Okay, in this video, I'm going to show you how to use OpenAI's function calling feature for the GPT models. Before we get into the code, I'm going to show you, or I'm just going to explain actually, why this is important. So let's just say we have a product application and people can chat with it and they can ask the application what kind of products are in the database or what kind of pricing or stock levels are there. And so the query comes in and the user might say, how much does your laptop cost? And we want OpenAI to respond with, hey, it costs $1,000 or whatever the price is. But how does OpenAI know about your product inventory, right? There are ways to do it. You might be able to feed it in and customize things through fine tuning, but that seems like a little bit like overkill. And what OpenAI did was they created function calling as a solution. And what function calling does is that it allows you to describe a function as you're making the request for the chat call. So when you pass the user query in that says how much does this laptop cost, you also define a function. Actually, you don't define it, you describe a function that your application has. So you're telling it, hey, I've got a function here that is a product cost function. Here's the parameter that we have. We need to have the product name, and this is the name of the function, right? And so if you send this request to OpenAI, it's going to analyze the message and then determine if it should call the function or not. And then on its response to you, it doesn't actually tell you the price. It actually says you need to call get product function with product name equal laptop. So it's more structured than this. It's not a string of text. So you do get an actual, proper JSON response that you can use to then call your function internally. And this opens up some really exciting scenarios, right? You can think about all the different things that you can have ChatGPT communicate with your backend code and say, hey, call this function now, and here's the data you need to call the function with. And there's incredible workflows that you can kind of power with this feature set. So today, I'm going to show you how to build an API using AWS Lambda that does function calling to OpenAI. I'm going to pause now and get my environment set up. Be right back. Okay, great. Our environment is ready. How do I know it's ready? Because if you look at the credentials section, everything is filled in, and our our terminal is connected to the remote instance. So the first thing we want to do is click on the little hat and follow the steps. I went over this in the introduction, but you can also read through this on your own. We're going to go straight to the get your credentials. And so what we want to do is configure the AWS CLI. So we do AWS configure. And it's going to prompt us for the secret key and the access key. And we can head over to our lab tab, get the access key, and then the secret key. We want to work in US West 2, and we're going to leave the output format. Step 1 completed. So we have our credentials and we've set up our CLI. The next thing is to get your OpenAI API key. If you don't have an account now, you can go create one and then go to this link to generate a key. I've already got mine, so if you don't have yours, please go ahead and do that now. Then the next step is to create a Python file, and we'll do this on the sidebar here. We're going to call it main.py and click create, and then we'll open it for editing, and our editing is done right here. So let's go ahead and write this file now. I'm going to copy in the code and then we can walk through it. So the first thing we do once we paste it in is we import two libraries. JSON, which is part of the Python actual language. It's a built-in library. And then we import OpenAI, which is a library we'll have to install. Then we set up a pseudo products database. This is just a pairing of names and values. So a name of the product, and then the price. And then we define our function. This is the function that we will inform GPT about when we make API requests. This function will take in the product name, and then it will grab the price of that product by doing a lookup on our database up here. So we use .get, and we convert the product name to lower letters, and then to make sure we can do a match. And then if there's a match, the price will have a value. So if the price is not none, then we return the product name followed by a colon and the price. If the price is none, meaning this will trigger, and we'll just return no product found. So that's our function that we want to inform ChatGPT about. I'm sorry, it's actually just GPT. I get those mixed up a lot. Okay, next we're going to copy in this code, and then we'll walk through it. So the first thing we do is we set our OpenAI key. So let me do that now. You can grab yours. And then we define a handler. This is the Lambda handler. And we have to pass in the event and context objects. And this is required by the AWS Lambda service. So I like to print the event so that we can inspect the request details if we need to. Those can be found in AWS CloudWatch if you are doing a little bit of troubleshooting. Then we set two local variables. We grab the body, so we do JSON.loads. This takes our event, looks for the body object or value, and then loads it into a Python object. And then we grab the messages value. So these are the incoming messages that the user will send to our API. And I'll demonstrate how that works later on. Then we set up a functions list. So you can describe more than one function. We are describing just one though. So let's go ahead and give ourselves some more space over here to look at this. And we give it the function name. So you'll see that matches our function name up here. We give it a description. This is getting prices of our products. And then we set the parameters. And we only want one parameter right now. We're going to do the product name. And so if somebody says, hey, what is the value, or how much does the laptop cost, then we want to make sure that this is a required field that GPT should return to us. So GPT will give us a structured response that has the product name that it thinks we need to do a lookup on. That's how that works. Okay, and then we are going to set our function response. We'll just set it to no content found. That just means that if somebody asks for a product that's not in our database, this is the message that will be returned. Okay, so then we make our actual OpenAI call, and we use this. We're doing chat completion. We're using the GPT-4 model. If you don't have access to that yet, you'll have to use GPT 3.5 Turbo. We set the messages value, and if you recall, we grab the messages from the body of our incoming payload. And then we set the functions, which we just created up here. This is our list of functions. And we set the temperature. So this is actually going to make the call and go communicate with OpenAI. And then that service is going to respond. And when it responds, this is actually going to have a value set to it. So what we're doing is we're going to check and say, hey, if the function call is in the response, this signature right here, then execute this code below. And first we'll set the available functions value, and this is a dictionary. We're calling it getProductPrice, and then we're actually setting the value of that to our actual function that we created up here. So that's the mapping. We're creating like a little map here. And that way we'll be able to do kind of lookups on this object to get the right function. So then we grab the function name from the actual payload of our response, and you can find the function name here using this notation. And then we want to get the string. So we know that there's arguments that we need to use. In this case, it's going to be product name. But in case you had more arguments, you could get them and have the whole list arguments in one local value. We're going to load that into a Python object, and then we're going to set function to call, and this is going to be a lookup on this value here. So this is just a fancy way of really kind of getting at what function we need to be calling and being able to call it. And then we set the function response value to this. And this will actually call our function above. So this is going to actually call this thing and execute this code here. Okay, great. So now that that's set, we do need to click save, and that will save the file to our remote server. And next we're going to deploy this function to AWS Lambda, and we're going to run through these steps down here. So there's a few setup things we need to do. We're going to install some dependencies. We're going to update our list of packages on the remote server. We're going to install dialog. We will install zip and less. Next, we want to create our package, a package of OpenAI, and also our main.py file. And we do that by first doing pip install -target, or T for target, /package. And this will install the, oops, I made a mistake there. We've got to give it the actual name. So it should be OpenAI. And you can see this code here. That's what we just executed. Then we're going to cd into the package directory, and we're going to create a zip file. And if you copy this, don't forget the period at the end. And it's going to take all the files and folders that were in this directory here, in our package directory, and put them into a zip file in our root folder here. So that's the file I just created. So now we're going to do cd ... to move back into the parent, into the working directory, and we want to execute this. We want to add the main.py file to the zip file we created, and we can do that with this command. So now this deployment package file has the OpenAI library, and it has our main.py file. Great. The next thing we'll do is create a policy.json file. And this file will be attached to the role that we're creating, and the role will be attached to the function that we're creating. And what it essentially does is it allows the Lambda service to execute the role, or to execute the function. So it's a required step. Next we'll create the actual role. This is going out to the AWS account and creating the role, and you can see our role was created. If you get to this point where you can't kind of escape out of this, just press Control-Z and it will escape to the regular prompt. Next we'll attach the policy to the role. So we created the policy, we created the role. This command will bind the two together. Alright, that worked. Next we are going to create the actual function, and we do it with this command. So I'll step through it and then we'll copy and paste it in. So it's AWS Lambda create function, then we give it a function name, then we point to the zip file we created, then we specify the handler. So the handler path is the file name, so ours is main.py, so you don't put the py in, you just use main.lambda handler. This is the function name. We're going to use Python 3.10, we're going to set a timeout to 3 minutes, and we're going to set the role arn to this, and we will fix this and add in our account in just a second. So let's go ahead and grab this code, paste it in, and don't press enter yet. We need to change the account ID. So delete the asterisks and that text so that you just have colons, and then go grab your account ID or account number here. Okay, great, and now we can press enter, and this will create our function, and we can kind of step through it. Here's the function name, here's the arn. If you don't want to read all of it, you can just press Control-Z and escape out of that. So heading back to our steps, let's go ahead and go to the next one. So we created our function with this, and now we want to create the function URL config. So by default, AWS Lambdas do not have a function URL. You have to perform this extra step in order to configure it. And just a word on this, so we're giving it the function name that we just created, those have to match, and we're setting the auth type to none. You can set this to IAM authentication, but if you're opening this function up to the internet, you just set it to none. And for cores, we're setting it to allow all origins. So grab that code, paste it in, and execute. And this response is pretty cool actually, because it gives us the URL actually. It may be hard to copy it from this terminal, so you might have to just select it like that. And then I like to open it and put it in a new tab. Remove any characters, or in this case I didn't copy the extra H. So I'm adding the H, and I removed a quote at the end. And if you try to open this, you'll see it say forbidden, and that's because it's currently locked down, but at least we know that this URL is actually working. So we've got to fix that forbidden thing, and we do that by creating and attaching a permission to our function URL configuration. So we're specifying the function name. The action has to be lambda invoke function URL. The principal is star for everything, and we're setting a function auth of none as well. So let's go ahead and paste that in. Control Z. I'm going to open this up a little bit more. We'll paste it in. And if that works, we should be able to go over here, click refresh, and we get a new error. And this is good actually. So our function is open to the internet right now, but it's basically saying that we don't have the right format of an incoming JSON object. So let's go ahead and test this with the right incoming payload. So here's actually how we test it. And if you can see, you're going to have to change this URL to your function URL, and I'll do that in a moment. We set a header, the content type is application JSON, and then we have this payload, the data payload here. And we set a role, a system role, with the content that you are a helpful store clerk, and then we set the user content asking for a price check on a laptop. So let's go ahead and copy this, and then I'm going to paste in my URL here. Okay, so testing it, we should be able to paste this in, click enter, or press enter, and we've got an internal server error. So what could be wrong here? Let's see. I'm going to do a little bit of troubleshooting and I'll come right back. Okay, I had a small error in my code. This return right here is a value that doesn't exist. We want this return to be this. So change that and then click save, and we have to do two things. We need to update our .zip package. So let's go ahead and do that now. So we just updated our zip file, and now we can update our Lambda function with this code. So that's how you update the zip file. This is how you now redeploy the new code to Lambda. And we should have our details there. I press Control Z. Now we can rerun our test and see what happens. Great, so it says laptop is $1,000, and if we go back up to our database, laptop $1,000. Great, so that's a demonstration of how to use function calling, and as you can see, it's a really powerful feature. There's even more to it. For example, you can make it so that there are multiple messages back and forth between your application and ChatGPT or GPT, which means you can build some really cool workflows. So, think about how you can use it. I hope you really appreciated this video and you liked it. If you did, please subscribe and share. It would mean a lot to me. Thank you.